Imagine being in the final days of your sophomore year of high school. You're out on the baseball field, just a totally normal sunny afternoon.
Right, just hanging out.
Exactly. And a classmate steps up to bat and takes this full, really aggressive swing, but the bat slips completely out of his hands.
Oh, no.
Yeah. It comes flying through the air, basically acting like a blunt force missile, and it strikes you directly between the eyes.
Which, I mean, the human body simply isn't equipped to absorb that kind of localized, sudden trauma.
It's not, and there's zero memory of the actual impact. The force of the wooden bat smashes into the face so violently that it literally crushes the nose into a distorted U shape.
Wow. That is brutal.
It gets worse. The soft tissue of the brain slams into the inside of the skull. So in a fraction of a second, we are looking at a broken nose, multiple severe skull fractures, and 2 entirely shattered eye sockets.
And the cascade of medical trauma that immediately follows is what makes this so terrifying. The brain swelling happens so rapidly that the central nervous system just begins to shut down.
Which is incredibly dangerous.
Absolutely. Within a very short window,
Yeah.
there's a complete loss of consciousness. The body struggles with basic autonomic functions like, swallowing and breathing.
Right.
This leads to a series of escalating seizures and ultimately a medically induced coma on the ventilator.
Right.
A priest was actually called to the hospital to comfort the parents because, well, survival was not guaranteed.
It is a profoundly gruesome, visceral origin story. But, this isn't a medical survival tale. This is the origin story of James Clear, the author of the defining manual on human behavior, Atomic Habits.
It really puts his whole life's work into a wild perspective.
It really does. Because despite this horrific physical setback, we're talking months of grueling rehabilitation, dealing with double vision, learning how to literally walk in a straight line again.
Yeah, the recovery was no joke.
Plus the deep humiliation of being cut from the varsity baseball team. But despite all of that, 6 years later, his life looked completely different. He became an ESPN academic, All-American, a top male athlete at Denison University, and won his university's highest academic honor, the President's Medal.
That trajectory is just staggering when you consider he started his adulthood on a medevac helicopter.
Right. So welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are taking you inside James Clear's architecture for behavior change. Our mission here is to extract the most critical, actionable insights about building good habits and breaking bad ones.
And we've synthesized all this material specifically for you, the learner who wants the deep knowledge without, the overwhelming information overload.
Exactly. We are going to figure out exactly how he went from a medically induced coma to fulfilling his ultimate potential. And more importantly, how you can apply that exact same framework to your own daily routines.
To set the stage for how he actually achieved this, we need to examine the title of the book itself. The word atomic carries a very deliberate, twofold meaning in this context.
Okay, break that down for us.
So first, it refers to an extremely small amount of a thing, right? Like the single irreducible unit of a larger system, like an atom in a molecule.
Makes sense.
But second, it refers to the source of immense energy or power.
So we're looking at tiny, irreducible units of behavior that pack life-altering power. Let's trace this back to his recovery, because he didn't just bounce back overnight through sheer force of will.
No, it wasn't some cinematic training montage.
Right. When he finally got to college, he was at the absolute bottom of the baseball roster. But instead of focusing on massive, sweeping life overhauls, he focused entirely on those irreducible units.
Yeah, he started taking control of his environment in a chaotic college dorm setting. And he did it through choices that, to an outside observer, would seem completely insignificant.
Like what kind of choices?
Well, while his peers were staying up late playing video games and eating junk food, he engineered good sleep habits. He just forced himself to go to bed early.
Wow, in a college dorm, that takes some serious discipline.
It really does. He also made it a point to keep his room meticulously neat and tidy. And he initiated a habit of lifting weights multiple times a week. Over time, that took his 6'4" frame from a fragile 170 pounds to a solid, lean 200 pounds.
Which sounds exactly like the ancient Greek parable of the Sorates paradox.
Oh, the coin one, right?
Yeah. The paradox asks this simple question: what is the effect of one small action? Like, if you drop a single coin in front of someone, does it make them rich?
Obviously not.
Right. No. And if you drop a second coin, are they rich? Still no. But if you keep adding coins, eventually you cross a threshold where the state fundamentally changes.
The pile of coins becomes wealth.
Exactly. Clear's thesis is that we all deal with setbacks, But our habits are the aggregation of marginal gains. You don't need overnight success. You need a gradual evolution.
And those small habits don't just add up mathematically, they compound. And the concept of compounding is where almost everyone gets tripped up when they're trying to change their lives.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if these changes are so tiny and so atomic, like putting a single coin in a pile, why in the world is it so insanely easy for us to give up on them after just a week?
It's a great question.
Right. If keeping a room tidy or going to bed early is that small, why do we fail so consistently when January 15th rolls around and our New Year's resolutions just evaporate?
What's fascinating here is that our biology and our expectations are basically fundamentally misaligned.
Yeah.
Clear explains this through a concept called the plateau of latent potential.
Okay, the plateau of latent potential.
Yeah. Human beings are neurologically wired to expect linear, immediate results. You go to the gym for 3 days, you suffer through the soreness, you look in the mirror, and you expect to see a bicep.
But you don't.
No, you don't. And when you don't, your emotions, specifically feelings of disappointment and futility, they just take over and convince you to stop.
Because the effort doesn't seem to match the output. Like, I put in all this work and got nothing.
Exactly that. But the reality of compounding is that it happens incredibly slowly at first. It builds up potential energy before suddenly crossing a threshold.
The book has a really good analogy for this, doesn't it?
A brilliant analogy, yeah.
Right.
Imagine an ice cube sitting on a table in a cold room that is, say, 25 degrees. You slowly heat the room. 26 degrees, 27, 28.
And the ice cube just sits there.
Right, doing nothing.
Yeah.
You put in the work to raise the temperature to 31 degrees, and still nothing happens. Then you hit 32 degrees, and the ice begins to melt.
Wow.
The work you put in during those early degrees wasn't wasted, it was just being stored. We fail because we quit during that invisible phase, thinking the 29-degree work was entirely useless.
So we have to endure that invisible phase where the ice isn't melting yet. And to do that, we need a framework that actually works with our neurological wiring. Because right now, the modern world is actively hijacking it.
Oh, totally.
Which brings us to the core engine of the book, the 4 laws of behavior change. To build a habit, you must make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying.
But before we break those down, we really have to look at the biology of desire to understand why the modern world is such a trap. The sources highlight the work of Nico Tinbergen. He's a Nobel Prize-winning ethologist.
Right, the guy with the birds.
Yes. He conducted these mind-bending experiments with birds. He found that a gray-lag goose will instinctively pull any nearby round object into its nest, thinking it's an egg.
Any round object.
Literally anything. If you give the goose a smooth, perfectly round billiard ball, it will actually prefer that over its own egg because it's a larger, more exaggerated shape.
That is wild.
And he found similar behavior in herring gulls. Adult gulls have a red spot on their beak that chicks peck to get food. Tinbergen painted 3 red spots on a piece of cardboard, and the chicks went crazy. They started pecking at the cardboard violently, completely ignoring their actual parents.
So they are responding to what scientists call supernormal stimuli. It's this heightened, exaggerated version of reality that elicits a much stronger neurological response than anything found in the natural world.
And the modern food industry relies on this exact biological vulnerability. They engineer junk food to act as a supernormal stimulus.
Oh, like finding the perfect crunch or saltiness.
Exactly. They find the exact bliss point of salt, sugar, and fat that creates an explosion of dopamine in your brain. It's a level of reward that our ancestors foraging on the savannah never, ever experienced.
So if the world is making bad habits wildly attractive and incredibly easy, we have to aggressively use the 4 laws to tip the scales back. Let's look at the first law, make it obvious. A key tactic here is called habit stacking.
That's a huge one.
Yeah, you basically tie a new habit you want to build to an old habit you already do automatically. For example, after I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute.
The underlying mechanism here is actually rooted in neuroscience, specifically Hebb's law, which states that neurons that fire together wire together.
Oh, I've heard that phrase before.
Yeah, it's pretty famous. When you pour your morning coffee every single day, you have a very thick, efficient neural pathway built for that action. Habit stacking simply attaches a new, fragile behavior onto that heavily insulated, high-speed neural network. You're just piggybacking on existing brain infrastructure.
Which naturally leads to the second law, make it attractive. Because if supernormal stimuli hijack our brains for bad habits, how will we make doing our taxes or, going for a run attractive?
It really comes down to understanding dopamine circuits. Dopamine isn't just released when you experience pleasure. It is actually released when you anticipate it.
Yeah.
It's the craving that drives the action.
It's about the build-up.
Exactly. A strategy the book offers is temptation bundling. You link an action you want to do with an action you need to do. Like you only allow yourself to watch your favorite Netflix show while you are walking on the treadmill.
So you are using the dopamine anticipation of the TV show to pull you through the friction of the exercise. But even if you bundle temptations, people still struggle with the initial friction of starting. That's the third law, make it easy. The text introduces the 2-minute rule. The idea is that any new habit should be scaled down to take less than 2 minutes to initiate.
Right. Keep it incredibly brief.
So reading a book before bed becomes reading one single page. Doing 30 minutes of yoga becomes simply taking your yoga mat out of the closet. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Because I have to challenge this premise. Can you really build a life-changing habit in 2 minutes? I mean, it sounds like trying to run a marathon by only tying your shoes. You aren't actually doing the hard part.
It is a common critique, but it fundamentally misunderstands how the human brain allocates its metabolic energy. The 2-minute rule isn't the whole habit, it's the gateway habit.
The gateway.
Okay. Yeah, the conscious mind acts as this strict gatekeeper. It constantly calculates energy costs and loves to pawn off tasks to the non-conscious mind to save effort. If you tell yourself to do a grueling 30-minute workout, your conscious brain calculates the high energy cost and immediately starts looking for excuses.
It tells you that you're too tired or, you need to answer emails.
Right. But taking out your yoga mat, the energy cost of that is practically zero. Your brain doesn't even bother fighting it. By mastering the art of just showing up, you bypass that conscious resistance.
So it's more about identity in that moment.
Yes, you are casting a tiny vote for the type of person you are becoming. A habit must be established before it can be improved. If you can't learn the basic skill of showing up, you have absolutely no chance of optimizing the finer details later.
Wow, okay, so you are establishing the neural pathway first, even if the payload traveling across it is microscopic.
Exactly.
And finally, the fourth law, make it satisfying. The text points out that we evolved in an immediate return environment where actions had immediate consequences, like you find a berry, you eat it, you survive.
It's instant feedback.
But today, we live in a delayed return environment. You go to work today to get a paycheck in 2 weeks to save for retirement in 30 years.
Which our brains hate.
They really do. To make a good habit stick, we have to artificially attach an immediate reward to it, like moving a paperclip from one jar to another to visually track our progress right in the moment.
It provides that tiny hit of satisfaction that closes the habit loop and tells the brain, hey, yes, do that again.
But overcoming the brain's natural laziness requires more than just gateway habits and paperclips.
Yeah.
We also have to physically manipulate the space around us. We have to design our environment.
Because willpower is famously unreliable as a long-term strategy. The sources point out this amazing historical example of bypassing willpower entirely using what behavioral economists call a commitment device.
This is the Victor Hugo story, right?
Yeah, in the 1830s, the French author Victor Hugo was facing a massive, seemingly impossible deadline from his publisher for the book that would become The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
He had been procrastinating for months, hosting guests, eating out, and just delaying his work.
So he uses his environment against himself. He gathers all of his formal clothes, gives them to his assistant, and orders her to lock them away in a large chest.
It's so brilliant.
And he is left with absolutely nothing to wear except a large knitted shawl. So without any suitable clothes to go outside or entertain guests in 19th century Paris, he remained in his study and wrote furiously. And he actually finished the massive book weeks early.
It's an extreme application, but deeply effective. A commitment device is a choice you make in the present that severely restricts your actions in the future.
We probably need some modern equivalents of that.
Well, a modern equivalent mentioned in the text is buying an outlet timer that automatically cuts off the power to your Wi-Fi router at 10:0 p.m. every night. You take the decision out of the hands of your future, tired, doom-scrolling self.
So essentially, relying on motivation is like trying to diet in a bakery, whereas environment design is moving to a celery farm.
I love that.
Yeah, or to put another way, it's like trying to paddle a canoe upstream using pure muscle versus just turning the boat around and letting the current do the work for you.
Yeah.
You are just changing the default trajectory.
And this extends to the things we buy, too. The text tells a fascinating story about the French philosopher Denis Diderot. He lived nearly his whole life in poverty. But then Catherine the Great of Russia bought his personal library, and paid him an absolute fortune.
Good for him.
Well, wait for it. Flush with sudden cash, Diderot acquired a beautiful scarlet dressing gown.
And that one luxurious robe ruined his life. Well, financially at least. Because suddenly, this magnificent scarlet robe made all of his other possessions look incredibly drab and completely out of place by comparison.
They just didn't match the vibe anymore.
Right. So to match the robe, he bought a new rug from Damascus. Then the rug made his chairs look cheap, so he bought beautiful new chairs. Then he needed a new mirror. He literally wrote that there was no more coordination, no more unity, no more beauty in his life.
It's a phenomenon now known as the Diderot effect. Obtaining a new possession creates a psychological spiral of consumption that leads to additional purchases.
We've all been there. You buy a new couch, which makes your TV look too small, so you buy a bigger TV, which means you need a new TV stand, and suddenly you're $3,000 deep because of one couch. Our environment cues our behavior in a chain reaction.
It's not just physical objects either. Our social environment is arguably way more powerful. We are heavily influenced by the invisible social forces shaping our identity.
Like peer pressure.
Sort of. The text highlights that we imitate the habits of three distinct groups: the close, the many, and the powerful. We have a deep evolutionary drive to fit in with our tribe to basically ensure our survival.
And the statistics the book provides on this are wild. A study showed that if a person's friend becomes obese, their own chances of becoming obese increase by 57%.
It's staggering.
The habit literally transmits through the social network like a virus, but it works in the positive direction too. Astronaut Mike Massimino noted that in his graduate class at MIT, out of 10 people, 4 became astronauts.
4 out of 10.
Yeah. If you are surrounded by people with phenomenally high standards, their extreme habits just become your normal baseline.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of environment design, it shows us why sheer self-control is a losing game. The people who appear to have the most ironclad discipline are usually just the people who have structured their lives so they don't actually need to use discipline.
That's a huge mindset shift.
The core concept is addition by subtraction. Making bad habits invisible or physically impossible is vastly superior to trying to resist them through mental fortitude.
Okay, so let's say you've mastered your environment. You've locked away your clothes, you've used the 2-minute rule, and your habits were finally running on autopilot. You're doing the things you want to do. You actually hit a hidden danger zone here that most self-help books completely ignore.
The dark side of habits.
Yes.
The dark side.
See, the upside of a habit is that we can do things without thinking, saving precious cognitive load. The downside is that once we stop thinking, we stop paying attention to small errors.
Because it's automatic.
Right. When a skill becomes completely automatic, the conscious feedback loop breaks down, and there is usually a slight decline in performance. You get comfortable. You stop actively analyzing your form.
You just coast. So how do you avoid plateauing? The text gives us an equation for greatness. Habits plus deliberate practice equals mastery. You can't just repeat the same motion blindly. You need a system of reflection and review to force your conscious mind back into the equation.
A prime example from the text is the 1986-1987 Los Angeles Lakers. Their coach, Pat Riley, implemented a system called the Career Best Effort Program, or CBE. What did that involve?
He didn't just ask them to play basketball. He rigorously tracked every individual player's granular statistics to find their historical baseline. He then challenged them to improve their output by just 1% over their best effort.
Just 1%?
Yeah, by tracking those individual marginal gains like rebounds, assists, defensive blocks, the players couldn't hide in automaticity. They remained hyper-aware of their daily habits.
Which brings us to the ultimate danger mentioned in the book, identity. And this required a really close look. The quote from the text is, "The tighter we cling to an identity, the harder it becomes to grow beyond it."
It is the ultimate double-edged sword of behavior change. Early in the habit-building process, adopting a new identity is a powerful catalyst. Saying, "I am a runner," helps you get out the door when it's raining.
But eventually,
if that identity becomes too rigid, it becomes a prison. If you view yourself purely as an elite athlete, what happens to your mental state when you blow out your knee? If you view yourself solely as a CEO, who are you the day after you sell the company?
So what does this all mean? We're told earlier in the material to build identity-based habits because behavior that conflicts with your core self will never last. But now the text is warning that our identity can trap us. How do we resolve that paradox as we age and our world shifts around us?
This raises an important question about adaptability. The text argues that a lack of self-awareness is poison, And regular reflection and review is the antidote. You resolve the paradox by keeping your identity small and supple.
Supple. Okay.
You treat your identity more like a wardrobe than your skin. You redefine yourself in a way that can adapt to changing circumstances. Instead of saying, I'm a marathon runner, you shift to, I am the type of person who is mentally tough and loves a physical challenge.
So it's broader.
Exactly. Instead of, I am a CEO, it's, I am the type of person who builds and creates things. The real goal isn't achieving a single static outcome. It is continually refining the system of how you operate.
You are constantly upgrading your internal software so it can run on any hardware. Looking back at our journey today, we started with a high school sophomore taking a baseball bat to the face, suffering a horrific brain injury that stripped away all his natural advantages.
It's quite a journey.
But by utilizing atomic units of behavior, James Clear reached the peaks of athletic and academic success. It wasn't one defining heroic moment. It was thousands of small, almost imperceptible choices. Going to bed early, keeping a tidy room, building a foundation one coin at a time.
The central thesis you have to walk away with is that your life right now is essentially just an accumulation of your past habits. The physical, financial, and mental results you're experiencing today are simply a lagging measure of the tiny behaviors you've been repeating for the last 5 years.
But now you have the actual mechanics to alter that trajectory. You understand the plateau of latent potential, why you shouldn't quit when the ice hasn't melted yet. You have the 4 laws: make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying.
And you know the neurology behind habit stacking and temptation bundling.
Right. You have the 2-minute rule to bypass your conscious mind's resistance. And you know how to design your environment with commitment devices so you never have to rely on sheer willpower again.
There is one final philosophical twist hidden in the notes section of this book that we want to leave you with, and it relates deeply to why human beings struggle with habits in the first place. It's an exploration of desire and happiness.
This is such a profound point to end on. The text points out that human behavior is fundamentally driven by the gap between where we are and what we want. We only take action because we feel a discrepancy, an itch between our current state and our desired state.
Which leads to this incredible realization from the text. Happiness is the space between one desire being fulfilled and a new desire forming.
Wow.
The moment you fulfill a desire, you get the promotion, you buy the car, you hit the weight goal, your brain immediately begins scanning the horizon for the next thing. This is exactly why you could achieve a massive multi-year goal and feel utterly empty 3 days later.
It's the treadmill of human nature. The author quotes the Stoic philosopher Seneca, who perfectly captured this 2,000 years ago when he said, "Being poor is not having too little, it is wanting more."
So as you go out to build these new atomic habits, you have to sit down and ask yourself a very difficult question. Are your current habits actually serving your happiness and helping you build the flexible identity you truly want? Or are they just feeding an endless, non-conscious loop of new desires?
Because if your habits are just feeding a desire for more status, more stuff, more supernormal stimuli, you will never find that space of happiness. You'll just be running faster on the same treadmill. It's something to seriously mull over as you look at your daily routines. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the mechanics of human behavior. We encourage you right now to pick just one tiny 2-minute atomic step you can take today to cast a vote for the person you want to become. Until next time.